The last half of the 20th century saw a boom in plastic manufacturing and a growing waste problem. To address this issue, municipal and state recycling programs emerged across the U.S.
People reject now the philosophy of the throwaway society.
Today, we sift and sort our waste into separate bins with the promise that our cans, water bottles, cardboard, and even electronics will be taken apart and turned into brand new items, reducing waste and the resources used to make things. But there's a problem with this emphasis on recycling as a solution to our excessive waste. For one, most of the stuff we put in our recycling bins doesn't get recycled. And here's the bigger issue. Recycling shifts the burden of waste onto us as individual consumers and absolves companies of responsibility for what they produce. This wasn't by chance. Since the 1950s, companies have campaigned fiercely to increase plastic production.
Coca-Cola in new 1-liter plastic bottle. 25% lighter than glass.
While framing consumers as both the problem and the solution to waste.
So come on, America. Next time you see someone polluting, point it out. People start pollution. People can stop it.
From the raw materials of nature has been synthesized a new material, a resin made by man, plastic.
When you toss a plastic yogurt cup in a recycling bin, the odds of transforming it into a new product are very low. Of the 8.3 billion tons of plastic generated since the 1950s, only about 9% has been recycled. About 12% was incinerated, while the rest accumulated in landfills and dumps or in the environment. There are hundreds of types of plastic products with different polymers and components.
Different substances and combinations being used to produce plastics with different properties for varied uses.
To sort it all and turn it into new material is expensive and technologically challenging. Companies have found it's cheaper to just produce new plastic. Most of what does get recycled gets downgraded into products that can't be recycled again.
Recycled plastic is more expensive. On top of that, the quality decreases the more often it gets recycled. It becomes less heat resistant and tears more easily.
For decades, American recycling facilities shipped much of the plastic waste to China until it stopped accepting U.S. waste in 2018.
China has introduced new restrictions on the import of foreign waste.
The flow of plastic waste from wealthy nations around the world is proving too much to handle.
A growing trend to address the massive plastic waste problem has been to replace our plastic goods with recycled aluminum and paper ones.
For a plastic-free environment, aluminum's the answer.
Aluminum recycles effectively, with lower emissions than generated during its production. And almost 75% of aluminum ever created remains in use today. But addressing the problem of excess plastic with aluminum or paper creates a new problem. A high demand that can tip a sustainable production method into an unsustainable one, especially since producing a single new aluminum can emits twice as much greenhouse gas as a new plastic bottle. So if recycling isn't working, why do cities and counties continue to tout it as a solution to the growing waste problem? Until the 1950s, Americans relied on reusable packaging, such as glass bottles, which had a nearly 96% return rate. With the rise of mass-produced plastics as the cheapest packaging alternative, reusable containers were crowded out. By the 1970s, the rate for all container returns had dropped below 5%.
Why are these in the dustbin?
The decades since saw an unmanageable pileup of waste in landfills, which prompted a public outcry. New York City instituted a tax on plastic bottles in 1971. Congress debated a ban on all non-returnable containers in 1973. And the state of Hawaii banned plastic bottles in 1977.
In a highly controversial action, one county in New York State has voted to ban all packaging made of two kinds of plastic.
A loose alignment of oil, beverage, and packaging companies, along with the Society of the Plastics Industry, fought and lobbied against these measures. Their efforts managed to strike down Hawaii's plastic ban and the New York State tax, and ended the ban on non-returnable containers. At the same time, starting in the early 1970s, these companies launched marketing campaigns to change public perception of who was responsible for plastics waste and what the solution should be.
People start pollution. People can stop it.
The concept of recycling was key to those efforts.
Make all America Sparkle City. Put glitter in its place.
Large-scale recycling campaigns and nonprofits like Keep America Beautiful, funded by Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dow Chemical, and Mobil, shifted the blame of waste from the product's production to the end user. The problem became about what an individual consumer did with plastic after buying it, rather than about the creation of plastic products in the first place. In 1971, the Coca-Cola Bottling Company funded some of the world's earliest depots for recycling household waste, such as glass and aluminum, in New York City. In 1988, the Society of the Plastics Industry funded the Council for Solid Waste Solutions to promote plastic recycling in cities, claiming that they could recycle 25% of plastic bottles by 1995. In 1989, Amoco, Mobil, and Dow formed the National Polystyrene Recycling Company, which made the same claim but for food packaging.
Well, we recognize that certainly the landfill problems are existing, and they're growing. We want to make sure that we've established this aggressive goal of 25% so that we will be able to recycle more of the products.
Polystyrene McDonald's hamburger containers are being recycled by a subsidiary of Amoco. They're just one of several companies joining America's recycling craze. Some, it seems, to improve their image.
The actual financial and logistical responsibility to build recycling infrastructure fell on municipalities and taxpayers instead of the companies that promised its efficacy.
The industry attitude was, we'll set this up and get it going, but if the public wants it, they are going to have to pay for it.
The corporate emphasis on recycling continues today. Exxon started funding the Recycling Partnership in 2018 and helped launch the Alliance to End Plastic Waste in 2019.
As a global manufacturer with a global customer base, we want to address this global problem of plastic waste, and we're looking to scale up that activity as quickly as we can.
Meanwhile, Exxon and other oil companies continue to ramp up plastic production as the use for fossil fuels for energy falls out of favor. Plastics, which use fossil fuels for every step of their production, are set to overtake coal plant emissions by 2030. In the last 20 years, the plastics lobby has persuaded the majority of states to require the recycling symbol on all plastics, whether they're recyclable or not.
The plastics industry went around to states, and they did this very quietly, and they convinced those states to pass laws that required that symbol with the number on it be put on plastic containers sold in that state.
Any product can display the sign even if you can't recycle it.
These companies have known for decades that plastics are extremely difficult to recycle, but pushed it as an environmental solution anyway.
The average person saw the symbol and said, it says it's recyclable right on it.
No getting around it. If the public thinks the recycling is working, then they're not going to be as concerned about the environment.
So if individuals sorting out the recycling in their kitchens isn't the solution to our waste problem, what is?
It is a new year and a new law in Bayonne, a ban on single-use plastic bags and plastic straws.
It's widespread regulation of the plastics industry and banning single-use materials.
California, one step closer to banning recycling symbols on things that aren't recyclable.
Single-use plastic bags are banned across New York State.
His office has already subpoenaed ExxonMobil. Abanta says oil and petrochemical executives had known since the 1980s that the vast majority of plastics cannot be recycled.
We need to shift our focus away from what happens to your yogurt cup after it's been thrown away and look at how and why it was made in the first place. From how our products are made and packaged to rules that reduce everyone's plastic use.